I mentioned briefly the idea of crypto, and I know you've had different views of this. A lot of people think of that as a new investment class that has had an enormous run thus far, but also as a way to mitigate, if you will, against the idea of what the value of cash becomes.
Well, I think it's worth considering all the alternatives to cash and all the alternatives to some of the financial assets. And so Bitcoin is a possibility, is that a merit? Right. I have a certain amount of money in Bitcoin. It's a small percentage of that which I have in gold, which is a relatively small percentage of what I have in my other asset classes and so on. And I think that has the merit. It's an amazing accomplishment to have brought it from where that programming occurred to where it is in the test of time. On the other hand, if it's successful, it's going to not be, the governments don't want to have it successful. You don't want to have an alternative currency. But we're starting to see governments like El Salvador. I know that's not exactly going to be the leading government on this, but there are governments that may take this on. But no. You have El Salvador taking on, and you have India and China getting rid of it, and you have the United States talking about how to regulate it, and it could still be controlled. So that's right. what it looks like. If you're El Salvador and you talk about your alternative monies, it's a different thing. Do you believe that regulation ultimately will make something like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have a future, or do you think regulation will kill it? Well, I think I think at the end of the day, if it's really successful, they'll kill it, and they'll try to kill it, and I think they will kill it because they have ways of killing it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have, a place, a value, and so on. But it's one of those things that has it doesn't have intrinsic value. If you put cryptocurrencies, or let's say Bitcoin, in the historical perspective, right? There are so many things in a historical perspective that were given that didn't have intrinsic value and have perceived value, and then became hot, and then they become cold. And so it could be either way. You just have to know what it is, right? I mean, it could be tulips in Holland, and the intrinsic value. So what is the value? And then there are technological changes. I'm no expert on that. I'm just trying to say that you asked me what my opinion is. Take it for what it's worth. I'm no expert on it. I think diversification values, it matters. I suspect the real question that investors should be asking themselves is how much stuff like that do they have? How much stuff do they have? Do they have gold? Okay, should we be talking about how much you have in gold versus how much you have in Bitcoin? And do you have a diversification in those kinds of things that we might call intrinsic value money? Because we have a fiat monetary system, okay? With a fiat monetary system, where is your hard money? That's the question, and however you go after it, I think that's the question to be answered.
I got to ask you before we let you go about crypto. You told CoinDesk you own some, even though you said you thought it was going to get killed by regulation. How much Bitcoin do you own? Do you have any other cryptocurrencies? And what do you think the outlook is for them now?
Well, I'm not going to give the precise amount of Bitcoin, but I do own some Ethereum as well. But the answer to your question is that I don't own a lot of it. I view it as an alternative money in an environment where the value of cash money is depreciating in real terms. And I think it's very impressive that for last 10, 11 years, that programming has still held up. It hasn't been hacked and so on, and it has an adoption rate. So I'm very big on diversification, and it's a relatively small part of the portfolio. I would like to say that cash, I've been quoted, cash is trash, that cash, which most investors think is the safest investment, is, I think, the worst investment, and that it's important because it loses buying power. The one thing I would say to investors is don't judge anything in your returns or your assets in nominal terms, in terms of how many dollars you have. View it in terms of inflation-adjusted dollars. And so cash, like this year, you'll lose 4 or 5% to inflation. And so pay attention to those, because I believe that that'll be the worst investment. And then beyond that, the important thing is to diversify one's portfolio well, because we know from that the surprises in the balance. We also know that those asset classes on average significantly outperform and will significantly outperform cash, and that they move between each other in a way that that has to do with correlations, because of when things go down, when the economy goes down, then bonds will do better than stocks, and so on and so forth. So diversification of assets. I view crypto as a small piece of that, and the message is cash is going to be a problematic asset, and hold that other diversified portfolio of assets. Keep looking at it in real terms, not nominal terms. And that diversification should be also international diversification from countries, not just asset classes, in order to have a true.
You've had a few opinions about Bitcoin over the years. What are your thoughts about Bitcoin today? Its role in the global financial system and just in human society in general?
Well, the evolution of Bitcoin over the years is one of the things that has influenced changes in my view. It has proven itself something like 10, 11 years ago. Imagine the programming of this, and you throw it out, and that's the idea. It has not been hacked. It has operated. It is built. It has come an amazing way over that 11 years to be maybe probably the most excited topic among a lot of people, and has been used and is now has obtained the status of having imputed value. At the same time, it is one of those assets that is an alternative money. I think we're entering an era where there's going to be a competition of monies because of the printing of fiat money and the depreciated value. There will be a competition of monies, and Bitcoin is part of that competition. But there'll be many monies, not just crypto monies, but there'll be central bank crypto monies, but there'll be different kinds of monies. And even monies are things that you buy and sell. NFTs can become a money, a type of money. You own it and it's an investment, and you could say, I'd rather own it than own Bitcoin.
Has Ray Dalio bought any NFTs?
Not yet.
Okay.
But only just because, like, I definitely want to buy NFTs to just experience them.
Yeah.
Like I think I should produce one.
Yeah.
And I should.
I should have asked that. Have you minted an NFT? You probably should, just to know what it's like.
Yeah, that's right. This stuff is happening.
Yeah.
This stuff is real. Okay, and how it operates. But like all new real things, some are going to go, and some are going to, it's like in the internet in the year 2000, pets.com could have been but maybe pets.com doesn't make it, and who knows? That's the beauty of the competitive system, that it'll evolve, and some things will be treasured and some things will be trashed. So, but when I look at it, I think we are in an environment of, what is an alternative money? A money has two purposes: a medium of exchange and a storehold of wealth. And we are looking for, and it's portable, and and it's best if it's recognized in other countries. So gold is one of those. So I look at it as an alternative gold, but I look at a number of things as alternative gold. And gold is still my favorite, because of certain qualities. For example, you can't trace it. In Bitcoin, you can trace who owns it, where it's going, and so on. Governments can have that ability to trace it and so on. A gold piece of coin, it's not connected. I think not connected has benefits, particularly in a world where maybe connections can be more risky. And then also gold has been, for many thousands of years, universally recognized as a source of money. And central banks, it's the third largest source of money in central bank reserves. And I don't think Bitcoin is going to serve those types of purposes and so on. So for various reasons, I prefer gold to the other, but it's a little bit part of my mix.
But then you look at it, it hit, I think, 69,000 this year is the high Bitcoin hit. Do you think it's possible? You mentioned gold. Do you think it's possible it reaches very high numbers, like 1 million that some people talk about?
I don't think that's possible, because the way I look at it is there's a certain amount of it, and there's a certain amount of gold. I'll use gold as a benchmark. The amount of it is worth about $1 trillion. Total crypto is about 2.2 trillion. But let's say Bitcoin, it's $1 trillion. If you take the amount of money that is in gold that is not used for jewelry purposes and not used by central banks, and I assume Bitcoin won't be used for jewelry purposes or central bank purposes, that amount in gold is about $5 trillion. So right now, if you were to have a portfolio that has gold and crypto, gold and Bitcoin, it's worth about 20% of the value of gold. Do I think it's going to be worth more than gold in terms of that mix? I don't think it'll be worth more than gold, but let's say it became worth as much as gold. I don't believe it will be. I think that 20% sounds kind of about right. I really don't know what the right answer is. And then there's the question of what is all of that pool of money, that, let's say, gold and gold equivalents, relative to everything else. Does it go from, let's call it 6, 7, 8 trillion to 16 trillion? Maybe it could double. It depends what it is in the world environment. But basically, if you use gold as a measure, it just makes no sense that it's going to be used that much more. Am I sure about that? I'm not sure about anything. But logically, it seems to me that there's a limitation on its price in relationship to other things that are like it.